Decide who you want to become, then work backward. Everything begins with clarity. Without it, you're drifting. You're waking up each day, going through the motions, reacting instead of creating, existing instead of building. That's how most people live, not because they're lazy, but because they've never stopped to ask the most important question of all. Who do I want to become? Not what job you want, not how much money you hope to make, not even where you want to live. Those are surface level questions. The deeper, more powerful question is about identity. It's about the person you want to be when no one's watching. Because when that becomes clear, when the vision of who you want to become crystallizes, everything else starts to organize around that image. Discipline becomes easier, focus becomes automatic, purpose replaces confusion. But it all begins with the courage to define yourself on your own terms. A weak mind avoids this question because it's easier to follow trends. It's safer to chase what everyone else is chasing: validation, applause, convenience. But those things don't build anything lasting. A strong mind confronts the deeper questions, even when they're uncomfortable, because it knows that discomfort is the birthplace of transformation. When you decide who you want to become, you are no longer aimless. You have a target, you have direction, and that direction becomes the compass for everything else in your life. Once that decision is made, and make no mistake, it is a decision, you begin the reverse engineering process. You take that version of yourself and ask, what kind of habits would this person have? What time would they wake up? What would they tolerate? And more importantly, what would they never tolerate? Who would they surround themselves with? What would they read? How would they speak? How would they respond to criticism? What values would they live by, even when it's hard? When you answer those questions honestly, your excuses start to dissolve. You begin to see where you've been selling yourself short. And that realization, while painful at first, is also powerful, because now you have a blueprint. You're not lost anymore. You're not grabbing at random bits of motivation or copying people who don't even share your values. You're building something from within. You're becoming someone from the inside out. That kind of intentionality is rare. And what's rare is often feared. When you become that clear, that focused, and that disciplined in your identity, people will notice. Some will admire you, some will resent you, and many will misunderstand you. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your presence confronts their lack of direction. When you walk into a room with that kind of certainty, it sends a message. Not with words, but with energy. It says, I know who I am, and I'm not here to shrink. That's what it means to build a mind so strong it scares people. Not because you're aggressive, not because you're arrogant, but because you've done something most people haven't. You've decided who you are, and once you've decided, you begin protecting that decision. You start saying no more often. You start walking away from conversations, environments, and habits that don't align with the person you're becoming. You stop chasing approval and start chasing alignment. That shift is everything, because a strong mind isn't built on the approval of others. It's built on the commitment to stay loyal to your vision, even when it's lonely, even when it's inconvenient, even when no one claps for you, especially then. That level of clarity and commitment creates strength most people don't understand, and that's okay. You don't need them to understand, you just need to keep building day by day, thought by thought, action by action. Because once you define who you want to become and start making every decision through that lens, you're no longer living by default, you're living by design. That's how you build a mind that doesn't bend to pressure, doesn't break under criticism, and doesn't shrink for comfort. You build a mind that leads, a mind that creates, a mind that scares people. Not because it's cruel or loud, but because it's certain. And in a world full of noise, fear, and distraction, that kind of certainty is a rare and powerful force. You wouldn't put cheap fuel into a high-performance engine and expect it to run smoothly. You wouldn't feed your body candy and soda all day and expect peak health and endurance, but people do this to their minds every single day and then wonder why they're anxious, distracted, tired, uninspired, and emotionally drained. Your mind is your engine. It's the source of your decisions, your perspective, your creativity, your discipline, your ability to endure hardship and recognize opportunity. And just like your body, it becomes what you feed it. That's not metaphor, that's reality. Most people don't understand how critical mental nutrition is. They consume whatever shows up in front of them. News built to shock, entertainment designed to numb, social media crafted to make them feel inadequate, conversations filled with complaints, envy, and gossip. It's mental junk food. Worse, it's poison disguised as relevance, and they consume it without question, without a filter, without a standard. But a strong mind never eats just anything. It chooses its intake like a warrior chooses weapons, with purpose. You have to start asking yourself, what is this doing to me? That question changes your life. What is this TV show doing to my perspective? What is this podcast planting in my beliefs? What does this conversation do to my self-worth? What does this music do to my emotions? What is this social media feed doing to my confidence, my ambition, my sense of possibility? A strong mind is selective, not because it's arrogant, but because it's aware. It knows that garbage in equals garbage out. It knows that what you consume today shapes your decisions tomorrow. So it starts feeding on power, not distraction. It reads books that challenge the mind instead of scrolling through chaos. It listens to voices that build character instead of chasing trends. It replaces emotional reactivity with focused reflection. It doesn't just entertain itself, it educates itself. It doesn't wait to be motivated, it stays in training. The most dangerous thing about feeding your mind with noise is that it slowly lowers your standards without you noticing. You start thinking like the average person. You start fearing what they fear. You start accepting what they accept. You start shrinking where you were meant to grow. That's how the mind weakens, not in one loud moment, but through 1,000 quiet compromises. But when you shift your inputs, when you start feeding your mind with wisdom, discipline, truth, excellence, something inside you changes. You start thinking longer term. You start craving deeper conversations. You stop falling for every emotional impulse. You begin to sense your own power again. That's not an accident. That's what happens when you upgrade your mental diet. Most people don't need more motivation. They need better fuel. They need to stop letting fear-driven media, petty distractions, and low-standard environments dominate their daily intake. They need to break up with mediocrity, not just in action, but in thought. You can't keep feeding your mind with weakness and expect it to produce strength. You can't expect confidence to grow in a soil full of doubt. You can't build clarity in a fog of noise. Start fueling your mind like your life depends on it, because it does. Read things that stretch your thinking. Listen to people who hold you to higher standards. Cut out the voices that stir fear, drama, and self-pity. Replace them with truth, clarity, and resolve. Be ruthless about it, because once your mind becomes clean, focused, and strong, everything else in your life begins to align. You start seeing what others miss. You start hearing what others tune out. You start moving when others freeze. And most importantly, you start realizing that the strongest version of you is not something you stumble upon, it's something you feed into existence every single day. One of the greatest tests of strength is not how much weight you can lift, how loud you can speak, or how fast you can move. It's whether you can think clearly in a world that wants you to follow blindly. Independent thought is not popular, it's not convenient, it doesn't always earn you applause, but it is essential, because the moment you start thinking for yourself, truly thinking, you begin the process of liberation. And liberation by nature is a lonely road. Society rewards conformity. It's set up to make you feel safe. When you agree, when you obey, when you blend in. From school to social media, you're trained to seek approval, to raise your hand when it's your turn, to fit in with the group, to follow the model, to speak the right way, to think within the lines. And before you even realize it, your mind has been domesticated. Not by force, but by repetition, not by threat, but by comfort. And comfort for the mind is the most dangerous drug of all. But you weren't born to agree with everything. You weren't designed to be another echo in a room full of noise. You were made to discern, to filter, to analyze, to test, to question. The problem is that thinking independently often looks like rebellion. It looks like defiance. It looks like arrogance. So most people avoid it. They would rather be liked than be right. They would rather be included than be honest. But the strong mind doesn't operate by public opinion. It doesn't outsource its thinking. It doesn't wait to see what the crowd believes before forming an opinion. A strong mind seeks truth, not popularity, and that pursuit comes with a cost, because once you start seeing the world with your own eyes, you'll realize how many people are still blind. You'll see how often people argue not to learn but to defend their identity. You'll see how tightly they cling to beliefs they never chose, beliefs they inherited, absorbed, or copied. And when you begin asking deeper questions, you will unsettle people, not because you attack them, but because your very presence threatens the illusion they're living in. It can be lonely. That's the truth. When you begin thinking for yourself, you may lose the comfort of agreement. You might be labeled difficult, intense, too serious, too opinionated. But you have to understand something. Loneliness in the pursuit of truth is not punishment. It's proof. Proof that you've chosen clarity over company, substance over social acceptance, principles over politics. And while the crowd might move faster, only the independent thinker moves forward. You have to train your mind to seek understanding, not just validation. That means reading ideas you don't agree with. That means listening more than you speak. That means resisting the urge to react emotionally just because something challenges your worldview. It means being strong enough to say, I don't know, and wise enough to say, let me learn. That's what separates the imitator from the builder, the crowd follower from the leader, the echo from the original. And make no mistake, there's power in solitude. The moments when you feel most alone are often the moments you're closest to break through, because it's in that silence, that space away from the crowd, that your real voice begins to emerge. You start hearing your own thoughts more clearly. You begin choosing what's right, not what's easy. You begin building a foundation so solid that it doesn't need constant approval to stand. The world doesn't need more loud voices. It needs clear minds. Minds that dare to break the script, question the narrative, and stand for truth, even if it costs them popularity. Because the world changes not when the crowd agrees, but when one person dares to think differently and stays strong enough to keep thinking that way when no one else will. There's a level of strength that can't be seen in muscles, achievements, or titles. It's not loud, it doesn't demand attention, but it's there, and when you encounter it, you feel it. It's the quiet discipline of emotional control, the ability to remain steady when everything around you is chaotic, the ability to choose your response when others are losing their minds, the ability to feel pain, frustration, disappointment, and still act with wisdom instead of impulse. That's real power. And once you master it, people can't manipulate you, provoke you, or shake you like they used to. Because you're no longer reactive. You're composed, you're grounded, you're in command. Emotional control doesn't mean suppression. It doesn't mean pretending you don't feel anything. On the contrary, it means feeling everything deeply and still choosing a response that aligns with who you want to be. Weak minds explode. They lash out, break down, or retreat every time emotions run high. Strong minds pause. They breathe. They observe. They ask, what does this situation require from me? Not emotionally, but intelligently. And we've been conditioned to believe that emotions are rulers. That if you feel angry, you must shout. If you feel betrayed, you must retaliate. If you feel sad, you must isolate. But emotions were never meant to rule you. They were meant to inform you. Emotions are data. They tell you something's wrong, something matters, something needs attention. But what you do with that data determines your future. And that's the part most people ignore. Emotional control gives you leverage in relationships, in business, in personal growth. The one who can remain calm often holds the greatest influence, not because they're better, but because they see more clearly. When your emotions aren't clouding your judgment, you make decisions that protect your long-term vision instead of your short-term ego. You avoid drama, you sidestep traps, and you stay focused on what actually moves you forward. Think about it. How many people sabotage their careers, relationships, or mental health because they couldn't pause for 5 seconds and choose a better reaction? How many dreams have died because someone couldn't manage their temper, their fear, or their pride? Emotional outbursts might feel good in the moment, but they cost you something permanent every time. And once you realize how expensive uncontrolled emotion is, you stop treating it like a right and start treating it like a responsibility. You don't become emotionally strong by accident. You practice, you train, you get tested. And every situation that triggers you, every disrespect, every insult, every loss becomes a gym for your discipline. You use those moments to build something stronger inside you. You tell yourself, I don't have to react to this. I choose who I am right now. That's how emotional control is forged. Not through ease, but through challenge. And yes, people will try you, life will test you, you'll be misunderstood, overlooked, taken for granted, you'll be judged unfairly, rejected when you gave your best, and pushed when you were already tired. But your strength will show not in how you complain, but in how you carry yourself through it all. When you stop matching the energy of chaos and start bringing the energy of peace, everything around you shifts. People notice, they feel your steadiness, and even if they don't understand it, they respect it. Because in a world where most are ruled by emotion, the person who controls theirs becomes rare, and what's rare becomes valuable. What's valuable becomes powerful. That's how emotional control becomes your edge, your anchor, your superpower. Peace isn't just a luxury you get to enjoy when everything is going right in life. It's a necessity. It's your foundation. It's your mental armor. And in today's world, you have to treat it like a full-time job. Because everything around you is trying to steal it. The noise, the drama, the distractions, the gossip, the conflict. It never stops knocking on your door. And if you don't set boundaries, if you don't become intentional, you will live in a constant state of emotional exhaustion without even realizing it. Most people don't lose their peace in one catastrophic event. They lose it little by little. One toxic conversation, one unnecessary argument, one more notification, one more piece of bad news, one more emotional reaction to something that didn't even deserve their energy. And suddenly their thoughts are scattered, their heart is heavy, their mind is noisy, not because they're weak, but because they never learned how to protect what matters. Strong people are not just strong because they can fight battles. They're strong because they know which battles are not worth fighting. They've learned the difference between being powerful and being provoked. And peace, real peace, is not the absence of trouble. It's the presence of clarity in the midst of it. It's knowing that you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You don't have to engage with chaos just because it's loud. You have to build boundaries, and not just with people, but with habits. You have to say no to things that cost you your calm. You have to recognize when a conversation is leading nowhere and walk away. You have to know when to unplug from the world and reconnect with yourself. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's maturity. That's protecting your peace. Protecting your peace means understanding that not everything deserves your time, your thoughts, or your emotional investment. It means being able to feel negativity rising in a room and choosing not to absorb it. It means listening to your own energy and stepping back when it starts feeling drained. You owe yourself that much. Because the longer you let the world set the tone of your mind, the more disconnected you become from your purpose. You know what drains peace the fastest? Trying to please everyone. Trying to fix people who don't want to change. Trying to win every debate. Trying to be everywhere, do everything, and respond to everyone. That's a guaranteed recipe for burnout and bitterness. And if you're not careful, you'll confuse being busy with being important and forget that inner stillness is where your power actually lives. Some people won't understand your silence. That's okay. Some will think you've changed when you stop responding to every little thing. That's fine. Some will say you're distant or cold when you begin choosing your peace over their dysfunction. Let them. That's the price of growth, because peace will cost you certain people, certain places, and certain behaviors. But what it gives you in return is far more valuable. It gives you clarity, it gives you focus, it gives you your mind back. And once you start operating from peace instead of pressure, from stillness instead of survival, you become someone people can't shake. You become the calm in the storm, not another piece of debris flying in the chaos. You walk into rooms differently. You respond to challenges differently, because your strength no longer comes from needing to control everything. It comes from knowing that not everything needs your attention to begin with. One of the most liberating moments in life is when you finally stop trying to explain yourself to people who have no intention of understanding you. You stop justifying your path, your passion, your healing, your silence. You stop shrinking so others can be comfortable. You stop pausing your progress so someone else can catch up. Because at some point, if you want to grow, you have to let go of the desire to be understood and replace it with the strength to be whole. Let's be honest. We all want to be understood. It feels good when someone gets us. It feels safe. It feels validating. But what happens when you start changing? What happens when your goals evolve, when your boundaries get stronger, when your past no longer defines your future? Suddenly, the people who used to understand you don't anymore. And here's the hard truth. Most people understand you only in the context of who you used to be, not who you're becoming. And that's where the friction begins. The more you grow, the more you'll confuse people who stayed the same. You'll intimidate those who refuse to evolve. You'll frustrate those who were comfortable with your silence, your weakness, your compliance. They'll start questioning your intentions, your attitude, your character. Not because you're wrong, but because you're no longer playing the role they assigned you. And the trap is this. You'll feel tempted to explain, to over-explain, to apologize for your growth, to water down your decisions just to keep the peace. But you have to resist that urge, because every time you explain yourself to someone who refuses to listen, you give away a piece of your power. Every time you adjust your vision so they can feel less insecure, you delay your own breakthrough. And every time you try to make someone get it, you spend energy that could have been used to move forward. Understand this, your purpose isn't a group project, your healing isn't a public debate, your growth doesn't need approval from the people you outgrew. It's not your job to be digestible, it's your job to be real, to be aligned, to be whole. Some people will misinterpret your peace as arrogance, your boundaries as attitude, your silence as distance. Let them. Their misunderstanding isn't your responsibility. Their comfort isn't your assignment. The strong mind knows when to explain and when to move in silence, when to teach and when to walk away, when to open up and when to protect its energy. It knows that being misunderstood is often the price of transformation. And once you accept that, you start living differently. You stop chasing validation. You stop fighting for a seat at tables that drain you. You stop losing sleep over people who were never meant to walk your full journey. Because the truth is, the ones who matter won't need you to explain. They'll feel your heart. They'll respect your journey. They'll support your growth, even when it challenges their own comfort zone. And as for the rest, let them talk, let them speculate, let them judge. You don't owe your future to people who are committed to your past. Outgrowing the need to be understood doesn't make you cold. It makes you wise. It means you finally learned to validate yourself, to trust your intuition, to keep walking even when the crowd turns their back. That's what growth looks like. That's what strength feels like. And when you reach that level, you don't look back, you don't explain, you don't argue. You rise, and you keep rising. Let discipline be the loudest voice in your head. If you want to build a mind so strong it scares people, it won't be built on motivation alone. It won't be built on inspiration, talent, or hope. Those things may light the spark, but they're not enough to keep the fire burning. The real foundation, the kind that never crumbles, is discipline. It's not the sexiest word, it's not flashy, but discipline is what separates the people who dream from the people who do. It's what turns a wish into a plan and a plan into a result. It's what creates power, confidence, and peace, all in silence. Discipline is the voice inside you that says, get up, when your feelings say, not today. It's the inner guide that chooses growth over comfort, truth over excuses, commitment over emotion. It's the whisper that says, keep going, when nobody's clapping, when the progress is slow, when the results haven't shown up yet. And make no mistake, the people who appear to have unshakable minds, they're not lucky, they're consistent. They've made discipline the loudest voice in their head. See, most people are ruled by moods. If they feel like working, they work. If they feel inspired, they move. If they feel confident, they try. And if they don't, they wait and wait and wait, waiting for the right moment, waiting for clarity, waiting for motivation to return. But the strong, the ones who rise above, the ones who finish what they start, they don't wait for perfect conditions. They don't need their emotions to give them permission. They've trained their minds to show up no matter what. Discipline is hard. It will ask things of you that your ego isn't ready to give. It will demand sacrifice. It will call for consistency even when nobody notices. It will make you do the boring work, the repetition, the silence, the lonely grind. But it's also the very thing that will build the character required to handle the life you're asking for. Because everyone wants the success, the peace, the self-respect, but not everyone wants to endure what discipline requires. And that's where the line gets drawn. When you start letting discipline lead, everything changes. You stop needing validation, you stop negotiating with laziness, you stop starting over every Monday. You become the kind of person who keeps their word, especially to themselves. And when that voice inside your head says, we don't quit, you believe it. Because it's not just words. It's your new identity. But here's the secret most people miss. Discipline isn't about being harsh with yourself. It's not punishment. It's love, the highest form of it. It's you saying, I care enough about my future to do what's hard today. It's you protecting your potential. It's you breaking cycles your past generations didn't know how to escape. It's you looking in the mirror and realizing, nobody is coming to save me, so I'll save myself. You don't need more motivation. You need standards. You need a clear personal code that says, here's who I am, here's what I do, no matter how I feel. That kind of strength makes you unstoppable. That kind of discipline rewires your brain. It quiets the noise. It kills procrastination. It silences doubt, and it makes your goals non-negotiable. Let discipline speak louder than your fear. Let it drown out distractions. Let it replace chaos with structure, because once it becomes the dominant voice in your mind, you won't just be productive, you'll be powerful. You'll stop chasing moments of greatness and start living in them. You'll become the kind of person people respect without even knowing why, because nothing is louder than the quiet confidence of someone who keeps showing up. Strength of the mind is not about being louder than others. It's about being so rooted in who you are, what you believe, and what you're building that the noise of the world no longer shakes you. A strong mind doesn't beg for attention. It doesn't chase applause. It doesn't crumble in criticism or inflate in praise. It simply moves with intention, with conviction, with unshakable clarity. You won't build that kind of mind by accident. You won't wake up one day and find yourself resilient, focused, grounded, and unbothered. No, it's built, it's forged in quiet hours and lonely choices and the discipline of doing what's right when it's inconvenient. It's built through self-control, through reflection, through learning to say no when your comfort screams yes. It's built by outgrowing the people, the habits, and the excuses that once kept you small. People may not understand the new you, that's fine. They may say you've changed. You have. They may say you've become distant, you've become focused. They may call you cold. But what they're feeling isn't your coldness, it's your clarity. And clarity is intimidating to those who thrive in confusion. Let them be uncomfortable. Let your growth disturb the stagnant. Let your peace rattle the noisy. Let your boundaries offend the undisciplined. That's not arrogance, that's alignment. That's the mark of someone who has taken full responsibility for their life, who refuses to be a prisoner of the past, who no longer waits to be chosen, who no longer apologizes for evolving. Because when your mind becomes stronger than your feelings, when your discipline becomes louder than your doubts, when your vision becomes sharper than your distractions, you become dangerous, not to others, to weakness, to procrastination, to fear. You become the person others look at and say, how do they stay so calm, so consistent, so focused? And the answer will always be this: you built your mind. You protected your peace. You outgrew the noise. You did it on purpose. So build a mind so strong, it doesn't just scare people, it transforms them. Let your strength be the evidence of your journey. Let your peace be your reply to chaos. Let your discipline speak louder than your need to be understood. And let your life quietly, powerfully, unapologetically show the world what happens when a person finally decides to rise